Hello and welcome to the Focusing Way podcast. I'm your host, David Battistella. Please share this podcast with others as a way of introducing them to the people, themes, concepts, and beauty of focusing. Our website is thefocusingway.com. Follow us on Twitter at The Focusing Way. This podcast is available on iTunes and Stitcher. Our philosophy is simple: focusing for better living. If you really enjoy this, you can support us by making a contribution via Patreon as well. All the links are on the website. Now, on to the good stuff. Breathing. Your heartbeat, your feet grounded firmly into the earth. These are the sounds and sensations which are the undercurrent of our aliveness. Years ago, I sat at the precipice of a great adventure. I had flown halfway around the world to Italy, where I now live, to attend a 2-week silence retreat in nature. The place is a short 60 kilometers from where I now live. At the time, I was afraid, dealing with some life issues, and excited and afraid at the prospect of what 2 weeks in total silence might bring. We were, of course, accompanied by talented and compassionate teachers who had a lot of experience, but still, like most things unknown, our immediate reaction might be fear. The amazing things that came out of that experience are too long to list here. It changed me forever and for the better, and led me eventually to being able to come to things like focusing with an open heart and an open mind. I learned many lessons on that 2-week stretch, but perhaps not one more important than the last words spoken to us by our teacher before heading into this silence. He said, "When or if things become difficult, listen to nature." That was it. His last nugget of advice was to remember that we were surrounded by nature, by sounds, by temperature, by trees and rivers, and all these systems that were always there, always right alongside us, flowing like our own heartbeats, our own breath, and we had a place in all of it. I cannot recall how many times over the 2 weeks of silence I gave myself over to nature, to rest in her loving arms, or how many times I wrapped my arms around her welcoming sounds, but the image and words have never left me. The very first person who was generous enough to share with me on this podcast is Karen Liebengoot. We met on a retreat in Germany, surrounded by nature, in a beautiful place outside of Hamburg. Karen spends most of her time now using focusing and mindfulness in nature, as she has active coaching sessions with people who come to her office, a London park, to reconnect with the source that gives us everything. And joining me now again is Karen Liebengoot. Karen, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast, my very first guest ever.
It's a pleasure.
When we left off, we were talking a lot about your work outdoors and how much of your work with people, your coaching work, is happens outdoors, and it's a novel approach, one I'm very interested in. But can you tell me, maybe just to begin, a little bit about what your outdoor work with people has been yielding, both for yourself and what you're hearing from clients and their experiences?
A lot of satisfaction and contentment in terms of what it's been yielding for myself. because it's where I'm most resourceful and at my best and happiest in nature. That's where really I like to say where I belong, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's what clients pick up on. They sense my connection to nature and the effect nature has, the outdoors, the space, natural settings have on me, and that's what they feel attracted to. And in terms of my clients, what they get out of it and what they say to me often and regularly is freedom, space, time to talk with space. They say it's easy to not say anything outside. It's easy to be silent, to just walk and to let things flow through them. They also say that when we walk and talk, they feel it's a more equal relationship between them and me as the practitioner or coach,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to sitting opposite in a consultation room. So they like that it feels less sort of intimidating outside, walking next and beside each other, rather than sitting opposite in a consultation room.
Yeah, that brings to mind, I read Steve Jobs' biography a few years ago, and there was a lot put around the fact that he liked to conduct meetings in this way. Has that come up with you or any of your clients?
Yeah, definitely. I often quote Steve Jobs, actually, because I also work with corporate companies and organizations, and I often use Steve Jobs' approach and his connection to nature and his knowledge of the benefits of nature, and how he used to say that, he would conduct all meaningful and important conversations and meetings while walking outside. And when I work with corporate clients and I say how I most like to work and my belief in taking teams or individuals outside, I often quote Steve Jobs to sort of back up what I believe in. Because sometimes it's still sort of, as you say, it's novel, and although people are attracted often to something different, it can also feel a little bit scary, how I work. It's sort of unfamiliar.
Mm-hmm.
And so Steve Jobs is an inspiration to me, and also shows that it doesn't matter whether you are whether you are an individual coming to me, or a CEO, or a senior leader, or a team leader. It doesn't matter. It's beneficial to anyone because we come from nature. It's our place of origin. We all know what it feels like to be outside, the connection, the sort of, in a way, coming home, the safety of being outside, the being held in nature. All of that is really not fluffy stuff. It's real. Sometimes it's not so easy to get across.
Mm-hmm.
And so I loved Steve Jobs' approach.
Yeah. Yeah, and his, I think, came from being in apple orchards when he was working up in that part of California. But it is. There's something, as you were speaking there, I was remembering how many times I've had amazing conversations on long drives, and that while that isn't really being in nature, it does have something to do with moving landscapes. Like with you described sort of sitting in a room, which is kind of a fixed space,
Yeah.
and the difference that image of a moving landscape while you are engaged, and as you're walking and thinking and talking and working through things, to have the pavement or the ground moving under your feet or the trees passing you by, there's an energy that gives off. So it's like I want to move that toward a question about the vibration of nature.
Yeah.
And, the parks that you pick or the locations, do you find they have a certain vibe? And, what kind of vibe does it create to help you help people outdoors in this way?
Yeah, it's a lovely question. There's definitely something about the moving that you described that is spot on. The vibe is one of spaciousness and peaceful, open. But also I think it connects to our knowing, of the interconnectedness of all life. I think that is really the vibe of nature, that unconsciously we connect to the interconnectedness of all life. And I think it gives people, including myself, this deep sense of groundedness and rootedness and mystery. This it's so much bigger, isn't it, life than our sort of self.
Yes.
And that's the vibe, I think. This there's so much more. This, he is something bigger than myself, and it opens our heart and mind. I think that is really what's happening. And of course the movement taps into, the not just the interconnectedness of all life, but also that everything is in process all of the time. Nothing is static.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that also, of course, is what happens in the consultation room. It does feel quite static, the sitting, but really everything is changing all of the time. Everything is in process all of the time. Our experience moment by moment, our physical sensations are moving and changing all of the time. Our emotional tone experience is changing moment by moment. Possibly also our temperature, whatever is going on. And, so in nature, often when I'm outside, today, for example, I was out basically all day with clients. This morning was a very different vibe in the park here in my outdoor consultation room, as I like to call it.
Mm-hmm.
Very different vibe this morning from this afternoon because of the temperature in the air and the color of the sky. And this afternoon was there was some sunshine, and the sky looked differently, and the colors looked different, and the trees looked different, and the sounds of the birds were different. So it's rich. It's rich.
And there seems to be, even just as you're speaking, there's the whole sense of possibility that the answers we're seeking can come out of anywhere. They could come out of that, hearing that bird.
Yeah.
Or it could come from the rustle of leaves in a tree, a wind.
Yeah.
We've all kind of had that experience where an answer arrives right from nature in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Or the shape of a tree, or all of a sudden something. Yeah, people make associations with memories from childhood, or all of a sudden ideas come through. Or, I notice when I walk with clients, all of a sudden they slow down and they lower their gaze, and I know something is going on. And then all of a sudden, oh, now I know. Or,
Mm.
yeah, real breakthroughs in terms of, oh, sort of coming unstuck. Yeah, moving out of a place of stuckness into a place of, oh, yeah, possibility. Oh, seeing a little bit further into life. It's very satisfying. It's very delightful to watch.
Yeah, and I think what's also beautiful is that by taking somebody out of a setting where there are constructs or constraints of an office, or once we sort of build walls and cubicles, we're sort of setting out a set of rules, and then once we get into a park setting or an open nature setting where you're free to move, the rules are sort of lifted,
Yeah,
and there's also a freedom to also let nature take from us what we
yeah,
don't need to carry. Like
absolutely.
there's something that we're sort of unconsciously leaving in that place as well. That is so lovely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, trusting nature. Yeah, trusting nature that it can hold so much that we don't have to do it all by ourselves. Yeah, that we can let stuff, that we hold on to go, and trust that, nature can take care of it. It comes with a deep relief and release,
Mm-hmm.
and a sort of sense of, oh, I'm not separate. I'm part of this, and I can relax into nature and let nature hold whatever needs to be whatever needs to be held in awareness or taken care of, as you say. Yeah, very much.
Yeah, and nature seems to be so non-judgmental. It sort of will take what we give it. It will offer what we wish to receive from it, and
Yeah,
it's so malleable in that sense. It creates a kind of and we talk about this in focusing, about wanting to have sort of an internal spaciousness. But
yeah,
even as we're speaking and I close my eyes, I can so be right with you in those spaces. And I can feel the vastness of those external spaces we're describing. And I
yeah,
can actually bring them into my sort of inner space. And I can feel and experience through your voice, through your presence, through the description, just the kind of silence and peace that can be created, which is in Gendlin focusing may have been called clearing the space.
mm,
You know,
yeah,
but I wanted to ask you just a moment. I wanted to speak a little bit about mindfulness and how do you invite someone new to the concept of mindfulness? How do you invite them to being more mindful?
yeah. Particularly when I work with clients outside, I always bring mindfulness into my work with clients, and nature is such a great helper in that, because mindfulness is really awareness that arises when we pay attention in the present moment, using our senses, and inviting people to really see what they see around them, really hear what they hear, and really feel what they feel, whether it's the wind on their skin or in their hair, or the clothes on their body, or the feet on the earth, and touching, touching something, touching the bark of a tree, touching the grass, touching a flower, smelling all the different smells. So often I introduce people to mindfulness by inviting them to increase their sensory awareness, increase their use of their senses, if you like. Particularly using senses that we don't often use as much as our eyes, because our modern, society, Western world particularly, is so visual. All the adverts and, the internet and YouTube, everything is so visual, images. But sort of inviting people to really listen to sounds, or to touching something, or really smelling something. And when I do, something happens. Immediately there's a shift. When people increase their sensory awareness, they inevitably, automatically come more into the present moment. And then the experience of themselves and of what's around them becomes much richer.
That reminds me of a time I spent. One of my first jobs was as a sound recordist, and you enter kind of different world, because you often put on this set of headphones which are blocking out all of the sound that your microphone is not picking up. And you suddenly become very aware of all of the sounds that you never hear. For example, when you're trying to sort of focus in and record somebody's voice during an interview in their home, you'll always hear the refrigerator turn on, which is a sound you will never hear. So there was a trick we used to do, and what we would do is we would unplug the refrigerator and put our car keys in the refrigerator. And the reason we would do this would be that we would not be able to leave without getting our car keys out of the refrigerator, which would remind us to turn it back on so that people's food wouldn't spoil. Because that happened a few times too. But the point I'm making is that there's a kind of awareness you get of like all the underlying sounds and all the other things going on when you come into another space like that, when your ears become sort of amplified, or when you're looking for a very specific sound and other sound is getting in the way, you realize how much noise can be filling that space, which you normally think in your visual field, if you're looking at it, it's all fine. But when you only listen to that space, it opens you to a kind of sensitivity of everything else. And I've always been a bit of a proponent of noise pollution. I've always found there's a lot of unnecessary noise in our world. For example, it's almost impossible to go into a restaurant or a store or a coffee shop without having music blared at you. And I've come to realize that music isn't there really for us. It's there for the people who have to be there all day long. But that is such a beautiful exercise, and even just as you mentioned, because I live in Florence and there are very few trees, and they cut a lot of trees down in the city recently because there was some problem. But there's one route that I take every week, and there are trees on that route, and I always stop to place my hands on it tree. And you can,
Beautiful.
if you sense into it enough, you can feel all the way down to the roots. And you can even sometimes feel the appreciation back from that tree.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is an important aspect, I guess, of mindfulness, being in nature, the sort of reciprocity,
Yes.
the mutual recognition, the sort of appreciation of nature, the gratitude, I guess, the connection, what nature gives us, but also sort of what we give to nature, our respect and reverence, if you like, can be profound. And with mindfulness, awareness of ourself and our surroundings, I think it does come with a deeper understanding of our interconnectedness and how things sort of hang together, when we have that greater mindfulness and sensory awareness.
Be sure to subscribe and be notified about part 2 of my conversation with Karen Liebengoot. Our podcast is available on iTunes and Stitcher. For links and to subscribe, visit our website at thefocusingway.com. Follow us on Twitter at thefocusingway. Please share this podcast with others as a way of introducing them to the people, themes, concepts, and beauty of focusing. If you really enjoy this and want to support us, you can support us using Patreon as well.